So the Dalai Lama, when I met him when he visited, I was worried because he had to fly. He lives in India, northern India, near the border of Tibet. And he had to fly. And so, he's like 12 hours off in terms of... And so we were worried he didn't get any sleep or anything. And so I said to him, geez, you're so far away from home. Did you get any sleep last night? And he goes like this. He smiles as big as it. And he holds up both hands 10 hours like this. He had a real sense of humor about things. I mean, he had a sense of humor about life, which you think of this guy who's very serious. He's a religious leader, deep, contemplative, meditative guy. Even talking about meditation, he said, some of my friends in other religions can meditate for hours and hours. He goes, not me. He goes, after 15 minutes, a fly lands on me. I get thirsty. That's the end of it. My name is John Hennessy. I'm a professor of computer science and electrical engineering. I've been at Stanford for 49 years, roughly. And I've spent the last almost 10 years leading the Knight-Hennessy Scholarship Program. I imagine a world where the next generation of young people will provide the leadership that we so desperately need in all walks of life.
Welcome to the Imagine a World podcast from Knight-Hennessy Scholars. We are here to give you a glimpse into the Knight-Hennessy Scholar community of graduate students spanning all 7 Stanford schools, including business, education, engineering, humanities, law, medicine, and sustainability. In each episode, we talk with scholars about the world they imagine and what they are doing to bring it to life.
Today, we'll hear from John Hennessy, co-founder and outgoing director of Knight-Hennessy Scholars. In this episode, John shares how he defines leadership, why soft skills and relationship building are so important, meeting the love of his life as a grocery store bagger, and so much more.
Hello, everybody, and welcome back to Imagine a World Alumni Edition, the fun edition. It's fun, right? We got a studio audience today. I have a co-host today, and we have a very special guest.
Very special.
The Godfather.
Oh, wow.
The Godfather, yeah. Anyway, anyway.
Will he have an offer for you that you can't refuse?
He gave me an offer once upon a time that I missed that went to my voicemail, and then I called back, and then I couldn't refuse once I locked him down on the phone. Anyway, we are thrilled to be here with John Hennessy, and I'm thrilled to have my longtime collaborator, now co-host, Willie Thompson with me. Willie,
hey, what's up? Yeah, glad to be on another episode of this amazing podcast.
So we're gonna do this in the same style that we think about the alumni podcast, obviously with some twists and turns. John Hennessy has been everywhere all at once and also in the past. He has done a lot of things in his career, and he has also spoken about a lot of things he has done. So we are going to try not to touch on some of the things that you've said elsewhere and try to tap into what the staff has told us. I think it's important for table setting to just explain to us, give a very brief framework for how you think about leadership. Like, what does leadership in a couple sentences mean to you? And then we'll get into kind of everything else you've done with that fundamental framework.
Well, I think leadership obviously varies a lot depending on the setting you're in, but the common factors are probably the capability to take a group of people, to take them to a place that they want to go to, but they see the path is difficult, it's dangerous, it's hard, and helping them, inspiring them, supporting them, energizing them to go do that thing that will really change the world for better.
And when it comes to that vision, I mean, I think I speak for all of us here. We have Gilles also who's helping us out with production and setup. The energy that you just articulated those sentences with is felt in the design of the program and the experiences that we have. So can you take us to the time where you were thinking about Knight-Hennessy and thinking about why a program like this was needed and why in 2017? And just for context, we're doing some research and found this wonderful article when John was first announced as president of Stanford. You were one of 500 nominees to be president, which I haven't done the long odds of that, but I think that's I think that's lower than the Knight-Hennessy acceptance rate, but someone else can correct me.
That's a long odd.
It is a long odd.
Listen, neither of us did a math degree.
Right.
So,
We didn't. I mean, although GSB, well, that's true. Okay, yeah, I did do some finance.
You do math in GSB?
Yeah, a little bit. Finance,
Listen,
or finance, as they do in business school. And there was this interesting quote from the Board of Trustees Chairman Robert Bass, he's a GSB alum, 1974. He said they found the right person for the right time in Stanford's history. So as you were exiting your role as president and thinking about Knight-Hennessy, what about that time in Stanford's history was so important to the inception of Knight-Hennessy?
The roots actually go back to a number of years into my presidency and some thinking I did when I took a brief sabbatical around 2012 and really became concerned about the quality of leadership. We already had a Congress in Washington that was already in deadlock a decade ago, more than a decade ago. We had dysfunctionality in terms of various governments around the world. We had immigration crisis, not just in the United States, but around the world, actually. We had the collapse of Arab Spring. And, of course, the 2008-2009 financial crisis, which was not great leadership by our financial leaders who helped get us into that jam. So I became dismayed, and I thought, is there something an educational institution can do to make a difference? Why not try to build a program that develops a set of leaders that are going to do better than some of the leadership we saw in the last 25 years?
Even at that time, there were leadership programs, right? There were some fancy schmancy programs, some of them across the Atlantic Ocean. We won't name them, because it's like this is the Yankees. We don't talk about the Mets. Anyway, we're not going to name them, but there were programs out there. And if you ask Malcolm Gladwell had very strong feelings that the world did not need us spending more money on a new leadership program. What made you think in response to Malcolm Gladwell, in response to naysayers, in response to all the people who said, John, you have so many things you could do with your time once you're no longer president, that this was the thing? Well,
I think if you look back at history, you can see the difference that one person, one great leader really made. I mean, my personal hero is Abraham Lincoln. One great leader at a great time made an enormous difference and took extraordinary chances in order to rid the country of its scourge of slavery that had been built into the Constitution. So I think there are people like that. And even in the present time, we can see how one leader, good or bad, can do a lot of good or a lot of bad in the world. And I don't disagree with Gladwell's point that you need a whole team. But teams have captains. They have people who lead, who inspire the rest of the team to do something truly extraordinary. Our program's small. Of course, you still need the rest of the team, and the rest of the university will help produce that team. We're a small fraction of the graduate population at Stanford, right? We're about 250 people out of some 7,000 graduate students. So we're but we're trying to cultivate the people who will become the leaders and develop some of the experiences and talents they need to do that leadership.
Yeah, and as we're looking in your office right now, I can see at least 3 Lincoln books, maybe 5 or 6 or 7. So the admiration for Lincoln is palpable in the room. One part of your Imagine the World statement I want to talk a little bit about is the focus on young people. Why do young people matter so much in your vision for what leadership looks like?
Because they're at the beginning of their lives. They're at a point where you can really perhaps exercise a real influence on their trajectory. And our goal is to maybe boost their trajectory a little higher so they'll get a little more accomplished in life. That's the way we think of it. These are already incredibly talented people. To get into the program, you've got to be incredibly talented, as the two of you are. So, but we think we can add to their ability to become real leaders and to really make a difference in the world. And that's why young people.
One of the things that struck me about the pedagogy of Knight-Hennessy as I was reviewing the website, which again I did with much trepidation, and I was blackmailed into applying. Yeah, I think I told you.
Yeah, you did tell me the story.
I was blackmailed. Yeah, I needed a recommendation letter, and John Hennessy said he wouldn't write me a recommendation letter unless I applied. Anyway, so I'm reviewing this program, and it struck me that there was a tremendous focus on soft skills, and soft skills is something that I think is often overlooked, and when it's discussed really with lip service, not with initiatives and curricula and training. And I'm sitting here and I'm thinking, wow, this is kind of bizarre. This is like an interesting way of thinking about leadership. And I think it shaped me in such a fundamental way as I've observed leaders. For example, I was watching West Wing last night, trying to find hope in the universe. And examples of good leadership and very snappy dialogue are ubiquitous in West Wing. In this episode in particular that I was watching, episode 3, they're trying to pass a bill. And so much of getting that bill passed is about relationship building, relationship maintenance, and tapping your relationships at the right time. How do you think about relationships in general as a leadership skill? And how do you think good leaders build and maintain relationships?
Yeah, I think building a leadership core, building a team, it's one of the critical things a leader has to do. You can't do everything yourself. Yeah, you might be the expert on doing it, but you don't have enough time to do everything, particularly as you get to larger and larger responsibilities in terms of the team you're leading, the organization you're leading. You can't do it all. So building a team that can work together, encouraging people, delegating, doing a good job of delegating and supporting somebody as they learn and go through a process is a crucial skill. I agree 100% with you that, teaching and figuring out how to teach some of those soft skills is critical. I do believe there are 2 ways you teach them. Go read great biographies of people who've gone through that, understand their mistakes and what they did well, and then practice. It's experiential learning. It's not learning where you just go read the book and you absorb everything. You have to actually do it. And that's what we try to do in Knight-Hennessy.
I remember at my cohort retreat at Lamar, you talked a lot about one of the hopes of the program was that we'd be friends, right? And I think that's something that's always stuck with me is like I didn't have friendship as number 1 on the bingo card not for the program, but like to have the director of the program saying like, I want you guys to be friends at the end of the day is like something that I hadn't heard before. And I've done a couple of fellowships. And so why does friendship matter so much to you too?
I think partly what we were striving for is to overcome some of the challenges that exist around the structure of graduate education, which tends to be much more isolated than undergraduate education. Undergraduate education, you live in a dorm, you're all being together, you're all living away from home for the most part for the first time. So there's a kind of bonding experience around that, which you can see if you go to a reunion. You'll see people hanging out with people who they were in the freshman dorm with, kind of renewing things 50 years later, right? But that doesn't happen as much at graduate school. It happens a little bit, but, MBAs hang out with MBAs, MDs hang out with MDs, JDs hang out with JDs. It's more, and PhDs, they hang out with their lab. It's the way it is. So we thought, there's really another aspect. There's a lot that can be learned by having a highly multidisciplinary global environment of scholars that you're learning with in terms of leadership lessons, in terms of cultural attitudes and approaches. So that was a key goal from the beginning.
What made you think that these people from all across the world studying some of the most esoteric things on God's green earth would have enough in common or find enough in common that they could become friends of all things?
Well, first of all, I'm an optimist about young people and their positive attitudes. And they're at a stage in life where they're thinking positively about things, right? There isn't as much cynicism as there is when people get older. So that was a key part of it. And then I thought we get interesting people, right? And if you look at our selection process really does try to think about how these people might work in a cohort and what they might exchange with and learn from one another. One
aspect of one outcome of all those friendships happening is the idea of community, right? Or as, everything in Knight-Hennessy starts with a cage, so community with a cage. And it's something, we talk a lot about. It's one of those like soft and squishy things, and we talk to people about it. People sort of say, oh, okay, I like community, or like, if you're trying to talk to people about like the values and benefits of the program. And one thing that I'd love to get your take on is how do you think about like culture and how you built that in a place like Knight-Hennessy, and we love if there are a couple of examples of initiatives you feel like you've used either at Knight-Hennessy or other places to really develop a culture that people can feel.
If you think about the arc of the program, we bring scholars together. The first retreat really is get to know your fellow scholars and really develop working and understanding among fellow scholars, because when they come into winter and spring and do storytelling, people will tell stories that they haven't shared beyond their closest friends, and sometimes not even with them. And they'll share stories about key moments in their lives, whether traumatic or exhilarating. And that, I think, is a sense of community and trust in that community, that they're willing to share those stories. And with similar programs like Deep Dive, right, that's a scholar-directed program, people share incredible things, but they do that because there's a community, which means there's trust, which means you can share that with those kinds of stories.
But I guess, how do you think about building that from the top, right? Because part of developing community and developing a culture is allowing people the autonomy to make of this house, of Denning House, what we're sitting in, of this sort of spiritual house that we all occupy, this shared space while we're on campus, saying, you guys figure it out, which you guys were very vocal about in the 2018 cohort, 2019 cohort, 2020 cohort. You guys are coming into something that is a lump of clay, or a lump of mud. It's even before clay, right? And you're going to sculpt this thing and you're going to fire it and you're going to put it in the kiln and we're going to see what happens. Because there's this expression that I think the first Silicon Valley expression people think about is move fast and break things. The second one that I grew up on was culture eats strategy for breakfast. And so I'm curious, as someone who has built many different organizations, initiatives, companies from the ground up, and has occupied leadership role time and time again, how do you build and how do you develop culture?
Well, I think, Eli, you're absolutely right. Culture is crucial, and in the long run, crucial to any organization that wants to thrive and be successful over a long term. I think you have to think really hard about what matters when you think about building culture. What are the really important elements? What's peripheral to that culture aspect? And think about, how do you embody those elements? How do you share them with people? And if you think about everything we do, from how we select scholars and think about that, we're thinking about how do we build a community and bring people together and get them to appreciate. One of the great things is, scholars come in and they meet their fellow scholars. And they're so impressed. Their first thought is, maybe I don't belong here because look what these other people have done. But
some of them have done a few fellowships.
Some of them have done a few fellowships along the way. And some of them did other things before they had the good sense to come to Stanford even. But that's okay. It makes for an interesting community.
And speaking of that, so you mentioned, we were on the heels of financial crisis and sort of gridlock Congress, and how much has changed since those years of 2008?
Not yet.
Not yet, right?
We don't have enough scholars out long enough yet.
Okay. Well, it's funny because I remember, I forgot which alum I was talking to recently who basically articulated this idea that what we do as scholars and as members of this community, what we do, the reverberations of that sort of like won't be felt for a period of time after, right? 5, 8, 10 years afterwards. In relation to that, like, why do you think a place like Knight-Hennessy matters now in like the year 2026?
Because if I look at the last 25 years, in terms of the quality of leadership we've seen around the world, things are not moving in the right direction. At best, in some parts of the world, they're static. In other parts of the world, they've decayed. I mean, look at this international assessment of democracy around the world. I mean, the U.S. has fallen. Lots of other countries have fallen. So I think the need for great leadership is not diminishing. It's increasing. And I think that's true, by the way, not just in government. It's true in the nonprofit world. I mean, universities, look at the difficulties universities are having now leading as we go forward. It's true in the corporate world. I mean, particularly now as we stand on the edge of AI really changing so many things, how we deploy this technology that's incredibly powerful, but also can be misused is a crucial issue. So I think the demand for great leadership is going to go up, not down.
Economics term, business school, I'm into that.
Wow, you learned something? Oh, I'm so proud. All right, we're going to move into a new segment of the podcast. This segment is, we came up with 2 names, at least, greater than or equal to 2 names. The first name that we came up is, you've been on a podcast called Leading Matters. We're going to call this Leading Vibes. One of the first core values of Knight-Hennessy is, this is something that, in fact, we had to establish a Slack channel called Cavelling. This is my legacy. This is my Knight-Hennessy legacy.
Oh, that was you?
Oh, that was me.
I didn't know that. I didn't know you were
leaving some Yiddish. Yeah, you're leaving some Yiddish in the game. Anyway, we had to create a Slack channel because people were not sharing the things they were doing with anybody else. And obviously, we want to celebrate all the success of members of our community. We're going to depart from humility for a second because we know that you've worked with some amazing people at various stages very, very closely. And there are a lot of leadership lessons that potentially people can glean from the variety, the mosaic of people that you've worked with in your time. So here's how this is going to work. We're going to drop a name, and I want one adjective, free association Rorschach test, first adjective that comes to your mind in terms of, this person and what they exemplify as a leader. You ready?
It's rapid fire, John. So.
Rapid fire.
All right.
Yeah. Shot clock is going on. You ready? All right. First name, Phil Knight.
Phil Knight. Action-oriented.
Lorraine Powell Jobs.
Reflective.
Larry Page.
Intellectual.
Roberta Denning.
Artistic.
Derek Bolton.
Insightful.
Ruth Porat.
Clever.
All right, we're about halfway through the list. Jeff Wachtel.
Caring.
Angela Merkel.
German.
The Dalai Lama.
Oh, humorous.
Oh, okay. Wait.
Dark horse.
Yeah, let's put a pin in there.
Yeah. We're gonna follow up.
Unfurl the humorous part for the Dalai Lama.
So the Dalai Lama, when I met him when he visited, I was worried because he had to fly. He lives in India, northern India, near the border of Tibet, and he had to fly. And so he's like 12 hours off in terms of, and so we were worried he didn't get any sleep or anything. And so I said to him, geez, you're so far away from home. Did you get any sleep last night? And he goes like this. He smiles as big as it, and he holds up both hands 10 hours like this. He had a real sense of humor about things. I mean, he had a sense of humor about life, which you think of this guy who's very serious. He's a religious leader, deep, contemplative, meditative guy. Even talking about meditation, he said, some of my friends in other religions can meditate for hours and hours. He goes, not me. He goes, after 15 minutes, a fly lands on me. I get thirsty. That's the end of it. He goes.
Very cool story. The next person we have is Oprah.
Oprah. Engaging.
Condoleezza Rice.
Insightful.
Fei Lee.
Visionary.
Malala.
Amazing.
And last but not least, Andrea.
Oh, loving.
Loving. All right. What a fitting adjective, because we love to talk a little bit about your story. We discovered that you met at a wonderful grocery store. She the cashier, you the bagger, and boy, did you bag. You
bag out.
Tell us a little bit of like your relationship to your wife, and just take us back to grocery store John. And just for people who are listening, this idea came from the idea that when John announced that he was stepping back, not retiring from his role currently at Knight-Hennessy, he got a standing ovation from people at Town Hall. How did that feel, by the way, John, to get a standing ovation?
That was great.
It was great. Through the grapevine, or through the redwoods, I guess, if we're going to use a apt metaphor here, when you said that you would when you told your wife about this, she would tell you, I remember you back when you were bagging groceries. I want to talk about that time of your life and how you all developed a relationship that stood such a long period of time.
Yeah. So we worked in the same grocery store. We got to know each other. Our first date was my senior prom, and we fell in love that summer. But by then we had already made our college decisions, and we were split up by hundreds of miles. I was outside Philadelphia, but she was 20 miles from the Canadian border. So this was not an easy place to get to. But we managed to hold our relationship together. And I think people have different kinds of relationships. In our relationship, we've experienced so much of our lives together so that we grew together and learned together. And we got over the difficult times of being split up from college for so many years and made that work. Although I'll tell you, at the end of every summer vacation, when we were headed back to school, it was like a crisis because I'd get ready to leave. She'd go up to her house. Then she'd run back down the driveway. It was really hard. And this is a time, no cell phones, no phones in your room. There was a payphone in the hallway, and that was it. And phone calls, long distance phone calls, were expensive, like $1 a minute. And so we were doing a lot of letter writing and things like that. But we survived that, and if you can survive that, it makes you stronger as a couple.
What did you notice when you were but a tender teen in Andrea that really like made you gravitate towards it? Because I also read that you sort of you played the long game. While she was on break, you'd be bagging up her stuff. You were trying to really get in into good graces. Like, what did you notice about that?
Yeah. So I think the key turning point was when we were working on Valentine's Day, and she made me a Valentine. Won't you be my best friend? Right? Kind of a friendship Valentine, but a friendship Valentine. And that was probably a key point in our relationship. And, we started life with nothing. I mean, I was a graduate student. She was working in a senior home, and we had no money, but we had the chance to be together, and that made a big difference.
You mentioned being together for so long. Do you still feel like you all are like individual people, or do you to what degree do you feel like your lives are just so like co-intermingled and intertwined?
Some things we enjoy together, some things we have our own interests. So I'm the big reader of history and things like that, and she's the fashion person. She's going to read the fashion section in the New York Times. I'm going to just take that section and put it aside. So that's okay. So we have things like that. We're both lovers of the visual arts, and we're both lovers of performances, Broadway and things like that. So we have things that we do together as well.
Can I ask you a bagging question?
Sure.
So,
Paper or plastic?
No, there's only one answer to that.
There was no plastic.
Yeah, there was no plastic. If you have a circular thing and a square thing,
Yeah.
what goes in the bottom?
That's true.
You put the circle, you put the yogurt tub in, at the bottom?
You put the thing that can be squished on the bottom.
The squishy thing. Okay, this is good.
Really?
No, the other way around.
The eggs. The eggs go to the bottom.
I was just seeing if you guys were awake or not.
Oh, no.
The eggs scramble themselves by the end.
Man, I'd be in some trouble at home.
All right, okay. All right, so settle down. So we're going to move into another segment here. This is our popcorn segment. This is a standard segment on the alumni edition here.
I just had some popcorn from upstairs.
Oh, that's great.
Very delicious.
What kind of popcorn?
It was a skinny pop, the kettle. The kettle. I'm trying to stay skinny.
Listen, got to get protein. Got to have protein in your snacks now. There's no peptides. It didn't happen. Speaking of skinny pop, first question in the popcorn segment is, what is or has been your favorite Denning House snack?
My favorite Denning House snack. I don't eat the snacks that, I guess
I don't eat that
the
slop.
Fig Newtons or the blueberry Newtons or something like that. Snack wise, those are good. Those are good.
Yeah,
those are good.
What was I'm looking at the picture. Is that the Highgate Sophia?
That is.
Okay, yeah. So I don't know if that was on one of the KH trips, but what's your favorite KH trip?
Oh, and the one I was on to South Africa was just extraordinary. I mean, it's just such a learning opportunity for something I really didn't have much background in. So from that experience, it was really great.
What time of the year did you go?
We went in the summer.
Oh, so you got a chance to experience the real winter. That's good.
Yeah. Although, it doesn't get that cold there. But.
Yeah. That was, we had some adventures on that trip.
There were some adventures.
There were some adventures.
Oh, you were on that trip,
A lot of people got sick on that trip. A lot of people got sick.
All right, next question. Favorite song for Knight-Hennessy dance parties? Thinking in particular about Halloween.
Oh, geez. Monster Mash.
Monster Mash? Okay.
It was a Monster Mash. I don't have to pay royalties on that. But, all right, cool. That's a good one. Favorite Palo Alto date spot? Help me out, John.
Palo Alto date spot.
Yeah, help us out.
He needs help.
Yeah, we need help. Got to take the wife out to something nice.
A walk around the dish.
Oh,
Sleeper pick.
You get a beautiful view of the valley and the campus and everything. Yeah.
Then you can eat after because you're
Yeah.
finished. That's,
Because you walked around the dish. You
John's
can actually...
get a dish.
You get a dish. You bring a dish to the dish.
Who said engineers and scientists don't have like poetry in
That's
them?
it.
You know?
Listen, we all have poetry. Yeah. Anyway, you're famished because John ate all the Fig Newtons in the house. There were no Fig Newtons left. Anyway, who is your favorite golf partner?
Oh, somebody whose game is worse than mine.
Like who? We know you're a big
my former
golfer.
colleague, George Springer, who's passed away, was my favorite golf partner. What he said was, you can keep score or you can cheat, but you can't do both.
Oh, that's funny. And last one is staff member you'd get trapped on a desert island with.
Staff member I'd get trapped on a desert island with.
Yeah, you got to survive.
Yeah,
Tom
well,
Cruise.
so I've got to check this out with my spouse. Who I'm allowed to-
No, she's not a staff member. It's okay. She actually was on vacation when you got stranded. She's doing okay. She's in Barbados. She's good.
I think that's a hard question. I think somebody from the medical school, because if you're stranded on a desert island, you may need a doctor.
So Eli, are you going to join John on the island as a contestant on Survivor?
I'm a lowly civilian. I don't meet staff threshold. Also, here's the problem with the doctor on the dress. They're going to diagnose everything that's wrong. They're not going to be able to help you.
Yeah,
they're just going to tell you that you're slowly dying out there. I feel that we are getting dehydrated.
Well, that's funny. Or you could bring an engineer with you to actually, turn the salt water into potable water or something.
Somebody who can build a boat.
That's true.
Someone can build a boat.
Get out there. We're going to transition a little bit into our closing questions for the time you've given us, which has been really great. So, as you mentioned earlier in the pod, you're transitioning roles, right? And, the idea is that, we as Knight-Hennessy Scholars, the staff, everyone who's involved with Knight-Hennessy from this quarter forward will be carrying that legacy that you've set with Phil Knight and others. But, you'll be involved with, a little bit of lighter touch. So you'll be teaching, things of that nature. What's something that you hope for Knight-Hennessy moving forward? I mean, you've seen the program from inception in your head to the first couple of cohorts to challenges that we've had as scholars interpersonally. Like, what are some of the things you hope that we carry moving forward as representatives, there we go, of this special place?
Well, I think lots of what the ambition we had for this program has already been fulfilled. We've done, it shows in the scholars that we have and what they're going on to do. I think universities, in an attempt to be more embracing, have not done an adequate job of preparing students for having a difficult discussion about a hard subject that you may disagree with and may go to your core values. So that was a lesson for Knight-Hennessy and for all of higher ed, which I think we've got to do a better job on.
Yeah, one reflection I have. So I actually took a class with Paul Brest at the business school on universities in crisis, and it was focused on higher ed, which felt particularly timely at the time he was teaching the class. And I wonder from you, two things. One is like this idea of like the university sort of like welcoming and embracing people, and some might say who were they traditionally embracing and who they have to learn how to embrace after that, which I think is a fair criticism of higher education. What would you say? What work is there to be done by institutions like Stanford to truly set realistic expectations where people can get out of the experience of being, at a 4-year residential college? Because that's something that came up a lot in this class, was like the idea of what the university is for. And, I feel like people want to have different answers. Like, what do you think universities have an obligation to sort of like set in terms of an expectation for students for things like that, where they might be surprised, where they have to like have these conversations and do them in a respectful or civil way?
Yeah. I think the purpose of a university education is really to learn how to think and think critically, to learn how to work with others who come from very different backgrounds. One of the remarkable things about a university is it brings students together from lots of different backgrounds and puts them together in a learning community. And that is an opportunity to learn a skill that you absolutely are going to need if you're going to be successful in life, because the rest of life it's a mix and match. You're going to be working with people from all different backgrounds and different fields. So that's something which I think is crucial as we think about what the role of the university is. Of course, we want to produce good citizens. We want to produce people who are going to go on to make important contributions that benefit others as well. And that, I think, is something we have to rededicate ourselves to, perhaps.
What advice do you have for prospective applicants to Knight-Hennessy?
Study those improbable facts and get them down there. No, I think be yourself. Tell us who you are as a person, what motivates you, what excites you, what your dreams are. That's what we try to get from the application.
John Hennessy, Willie Thompson.
It's been a pleasure.
Thank you so much for taking the time. We know how crazy your schedule is. We appreciate you being on the podcast.
Thank you, Eli. Thank you, Willie.
Thank you for joining us for this episode of Imagine the World, where we hear from inspiring members of the KHS community who are making significant contributions in their respective fields, challenging the status quo and pushing the boundaries of what is possible as they imagine the world they want to see.
This podcast is sponsored by Knight-Hennessy Scholars at Stanford University, a multidisciplinary, multicultural graduate fellowship program providing scholars with financial support to pursue graduate studies at Stanford while helping equip them to be visionary, courageous, and collaborative leaders who address complex challenges facing the world. Follow us on social media at Knight-Hennessy and visit our website at kh.stanford.edu to learn more about the program and our community.